and we're covered with skin. So the drum is a replica of the human being. The mouth, of course, is what speaks, and that's what the drummer is hitting, the mouth of the drum, where the skin can reverberate a sound. That the drum is a heartbeat, and when you look at hip hop, they're so in love with the heartbeat. They blow it up big time. I mean, so they'll have a drum necessarily, but a big bass beat, which is the heartbeat again, it kind of it overshadows sometimes the lyrics because the beat is so pronounced. But it's almost like a scream, a yell. I'm alive! I'm alive! I'm alive! I mean, it's like the heart is crying out, and the beat is always going to be
You're
in our
tuned in
music.
to GHCR, Grant Houses Community Radio, the soul of the Upper West Side.
Okay, the heartbeat,
Yes.
hip hop
So
screaming.
so that's what the drum has always represented. It's the heartbeat, and of course, and we have different patterns, but it's without the drum, very little is a well. You're not going to live if you don't have a heartbeat. It's very simple. So,
well, well, listen, go back. It seemed as though you were going, your mind went to a particular space when you were talking about hip hop and the uniqueness of the drum beat in their presentations. You said
right.
as though screaming out,
Right,
build on.
they are. That's what it is, and a lot of those brothers don't have any idea. They have fallen in love. They're fascinated with the beat, but that's their heart beating, and with the excitement of being alive, and they want everybody to know that because the world that we have been pigeonholed into is not a happy place for many of us, and we have to break away from all that. And hip hop is truly a breakaway, and the beat that has to be pronounced. The sound has to be loud. You can't have soft hip hop. It's got to be in your face, big time. And many people want to give the Last Poets credit for being the foundation for it. Well, we'll take some credit on certain levels, but the reality is this is an evolution of sound, and our music has always evolved. Whether the Last Poets were here or not, we're going to always evolve. We're always going to change things because we're always seeking a conversation with God. We're trying to find a place to get to heaven in sound and in feelings. And our only avenue that we've discovered that it will lead us there is that creative avenue, because that's the voice of God. When you have any kind of creative energy that you try to put on display, you are actually showing the God in you. That's where He lives in your creation, because of course we're all creations unto ourselves, and to have that beat, that big pronounced down beat, is a confirmation that I'm alive and well, and I'm standing right in front of you.
What difference would a real drum beat, a real drum
Well, I
use?
think a real drum beat, as opposed, say, going back to the motherland. I think it has its statement. I think that, of course, is a direct, of course, obvious that connection with the with the motherland when you're playing a real drum. But I understand in its different conversions of how that drum is still emulated and imitated. But I think that if you start dealing with the real drum, then you're going to have to learn some history. You're going to start educating yourself, and a whole lot of folks really don't want to be educated as much as they want to participate. So
Well, well, this interview is for the purpose of educating us who are doing the interview, as well as the audience around the world who will be enjoying this. So, tell us the history of the drum. What the role of that drum before enslavement?
the first communication device, the first AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile, however you want to deal with it. The drum was the way in which we communicated messages to one another. If there was something, if the king was getting married to his sixth wife, and the neighboring villages need to know so they could show up at the festive occasion, the drummers would get on a mountaintop or get someplace where the drum would resound and you would get the message. I mean, it was such a wonderful way to pass on information, but you had to have somebody who could interpret the rhythms and who could read the language of the drum. And when the Last Poets first got started, it was so interesting because we knew that we were saying things that we wanted folks to take in, to grasp, and we knew we had that, and we wanted a percussionist who could echo that. So we actually, I mean, that was probably one of the biggest deals with the group. We went through at least, I'd say, a half a dozen drummers. Even we would even tried a guitar player before we settled in on the drummer that we chose, whose name was Raymond Hurry. His African name was Elijah on the first album. And the only reason that he just stood above everybody else is because he knew the language of the drum. He could he would play almost what you were saying, but in a rhythm that you would just become just enticed by the rhythm. I mean, it was like just outrageous how he could follow. Matter of fact, to be even more clear, if you had a brand new poem that you wanted to put into the repertoire of into our set, of the idea of coming with your poem and you get on stage and you share it with the other guys in the group, and of course Elijah's there with his drum. He kept his drum in a duffel bag, and in the duffel bag, you have it clamped up, but his drum was usually nearby him. Now, if you got on stage, you started doing your poem, and if that duffel bag didn't open up, and if he didn't start playing some kind of rhythm behind that poem while you were doing it, you might as well take that poem and throw it in the garbage because it was not going to be in the set. Well, I had the unfortunate experience of having that. I had written a poem that because I was raised in Queens and I was just going off about those folks in Queens, so I wrote this poem called "Get Hip," and I thought "Get Hip" was the hippest thing I'd ever done. I mean, and I was ranting and raving about those Negroes in Queens. I was calling them all kind of silly names, and it was nothing poetic. It was just a bunch of ranting and raving. I was just going off, and Elijah, his drum was right next to him in the duffel bag. I don't even think he looked at his duffel bag, and I felt so bad because he was my friend. We were close, and he always had something to play behind my poetry. He didn't even look at the bag. And then Kane said, "We're not reading that crap on stage." And I was ready to punch him in the face because I just wrote this. I typed it up on my grandfather's typewriter. How you gonna call it crap? I'm ready to punch you in your face. This is personal. I mean, but I had to reread it, and I had to recognize it was crap, and I had to throw it away because it wasn't working. I don't think Elijah knew anything about figurative language, metaphors, or similes, and all that, but he knew about feelings. And it's just like James Brown said, I got the feeling. Feelings are everything for us. Black people will function on feelings. Back in the day, we used to call it vibrations. Man, I don't like the vibes. I'm getting out of here. Or the vibes are cool at so-and-so spot. We are feeling people. We're not a psychoanalytical type of people. We're going to feel you. If we can't feel you, then it ain't happen. I think even in hip-hop, they use the expression, "I'm not feeling her. I'm not feeling this." And if we're not feeling it, it's just not happening. It's not going to work. And you can try to make up a story as to why you should feel it, but if your feelings are not going to lie to you. If you're not feeling it, you're not. And you got to be honest with yourself. Well, that's what the drum does. The drum makes you feel something. And if you can't feel something, then you got to question whether or not you're alive.
Okay, there in the past, you have made observations regarding the school system, regarding the music itself, and talk about the takeover or the co-opting of hip hop by the record industry into gangster rap.
Well, anything we do that becomes popular will be co-opted because they have a direction that they would like us to go in, and it's not about being majestic. It's not about getting back to something royal and decent and wonderful that we should get to. They want us to cause horror and terror, and they want us to create madness within our own community. And see, the system that we are living in, this world that we're living in, is based on capitalism. They make money off of all kinds of bad things. I mean, you don't make money when there's peace. You make money when there's war. You don't make money when there's calm. You make money when there's a whole lot of turmoil. Money is made. So to put us, it's like with what they've done with hip hop is like, if you have a situation where you got some mice and you want to get rid of the mice. So you put out a little poison, and it's very tasty. And the mice takes a little bit, and he takes some back to his buddies who didn't show up at the spot, and he shares a little piece of stuff that he got with them. Next thing, time they come down there, they see about 24 mice all dead because they've gotten a piece of that poison. Well, that's what the whole industry is doing. They're giving these brothers an opportunity to make some money, to put on a clown show, and they're paying them to do things that are going to make us not respect each other, that are going to demean our women, and to give us the wrong values. I was so upset, for example, when 50 Cent came out with a movie that many people thought was slick, Get Rich or Die Trying. Are you kidding me? I mean, get rich? Are you kidding me? We're already rich. We have minds within us that we need to take care of. We got gold, diamond, silver, uranium, platinum, all that's inside of us. Recognize where your wealth is at. I mean, unfortunately, he didn't see that, and consequently, you're leading brothers to slaughter. In this capitalistic world, we've always practiced every single political science you can imagine has already been practiced in Africa, but there's never been anything so overwhelming until it can replace the values you have for your family, your mother, your loved ones. But in this society that we're in, money is worth more than your mama, and that's exactly how they would like you to see it, because that's a demonic thing, and we're not dealing with a godly thing here. We're dealing with something that's very demonic. We're dealing with something that is very, very much about hell as opposed to the heaven that we like to see.
You've talked about in the past. You've talked about toxic energy and
Yes.
how you have observed that in the school system. Tie that together with the hip hop, the state of mind, the lack of.
Well, first of all, if you're in a school system and you're not, first of all, the school system is designed to make us feel bad about ourselves. How are you going to have a school system where there's a majority of black kids sitting in the class and there's no curriculum, nothing at all that talks about how they got here, who they were before they came. There's no history. You have nothing. You are just a little colored guy in a class who's got to learn whatever it is the teacher says learn today to pass a test. So the system of education is very fake. It's not real in terms of real for us, because they're trying to fit us into see Sally run, look at Dick and Jane, see Puff chase Spot. And we ain't got Puff or Spot, and we're not Sally, Dick, or Jane. We have a whole nother way of looking at things. It's like we're in a system that knows how to jump a single rope, but they don't have no clue as to how to jump double dutch. And that's who we are. We are too heavy. We're much too smart to be in a system that makes us look stupid. I mean, and that's the sad part. We don't seem to understand that. There's nothing wrong with our kids. We've got a whole bunch of black kids sitting in special ed because they don't follow the rules. Those rules were not made to be followed. Those rules are stupid. It's as dumb as the rule that they have for if you want to tell a story, if you're in storytelling contests, the way they have the kids tell stories, they got to stand there. They cannot use their hands. They cannot use their arms. They got to stand there with their arms behind their back or in front of them, neatly folded, or not even folded, just clasping your hands in front of you. But you cannot move your arms or your hands, and you got to stand there for however long it takes to tell your story. That is phony. We tell stories by using our hands. Our hands is a part of the language. Our body movements go with the story. There is no story if you ain't got no body movements. But this is the system that we're in. It's a constipated system that does not have room for the whole life flow that we should be worshiping and praising and cherishing. They want you to be stilted because they're stilted. They want you to only know how to square dance. They don't want you to know how to do anything that's got any flavor, because they can't do that. I mean, that's just it's trying to put you in a box to be controlled. It's all about control. It's nothing else. If they can't control you, then you're out of order, and chances are way to jail.
Okay, you're very clear, Brother Abiodun. However, I need you to hit it again. You sparked something in my head when you said we're double dutch and they're only a single strand of the rope. You said it better than that. But how great we are, and putting us into a situation that does not bring out our greatness. That's my wording. I need you to go back over that piece again.
No, I mean it's basic. Like anybody can jump a single rope for the most part. I think all boxers do it for working out. But when you do double dutch, there's a whole nother rhythm that comes into play, and you got to have some rhythm in order to jump double dutch. I know because I've even tried it as a boy, just looking at the sisters jump double dutch. I thought I could get into it. There's some rhythm involved, and our sisters do it, but just they don't just annihilate the rhythm. I mean, they just do a whole number with the rhythm and turn around and do tricks and oh my God, I mean, it's just amazing to see the mathematics of us, and yet and still they got us looking at ourselves as being poor mathematical students. Say, well, he's pretty good in all the other subjects except math. We are math, damn it, but we don't seem to understand that, and so and we're not living in a system that endorses that. I mean, to think that all these years, for however many years it's been, that there's some sisters sitting in the NASA Space Center running the whole space program
Right, right.
because of their mathematical genius. How, what would that have done for our little sisters in these schools in the cities who are running around here thinking that they are nobody, just a bunch of little chicken heads running around cackling all day? These girls would be mathematicians. All we got to do is see an example of ourselves doing it, and we follow examples beautifully. But if you don't give me an example, I don't even know. I have no clue. But we have so many gifts, and so I'm saying we are able to comprehend and to decipher things that they don't even imagine we can because we have a higher mindset. It's just how it's presented to us. Right now, I'm in a thing about giving my principals of different schools that I know, a playlist of jazz to play in the school because I say jazz was music. That's medicine. If you got jazz playing in your schools, it's going to force folks to think a little differently. Now, hip hop has got the fat beat, and you can shake your booty, and you can get into a groove maybe. But jazz makes you think. There's rhythm in it, and it doesn't. I play Around Midnight by Monk, play Ascension by Train. You ain't got to announce to the kids who it is necessarily right away. Just play it while they're changing class, while they're in the bathroom, or while they're eating lunch, and let that music seep into their souls. Watch how they start to think. It'll change the way they think because music has a lot to do with music is a soundtrack of our lives. Always has been. We you got kids that will listen to music all day, don't hear a damn thing the teacher's saying because they got their headphones on. They're not even
Mm,
thinking about that. So we have got to utilize the gifts that we have, and when we start utilizing the gifts that we have and the gifts that we are attracted to, we can raise our consciousness on whatever level you want. Social studies, history, science, math, whatever. But it's a way in which you approach it. Nobody is approaching us in a way that can reach us as a people because that's not on the agenda to bring us to their level, to bring us down to their standards. And that's what it is, not bringing us up. They're bringing us
mm,
down. We're higher thinkers. We've always been higher thinkers. It's just a matter of how you present this to me so that I can really figure it out. And there are ways to present stuff. There is no teacher on the planet can teach without giving examples. And we've got tremendous examples of us doing impossible things that no one else could figure out. If those examples were made available to us in the school system, you would have so many more black folks who would be mastering their craft in whatever they've decided to do. But that's not what the plan was. To keep us as dumb as possible, to make us feel less than who we are, to continue to try to make us feel bad about ourselves is ingrained in the system. They cannot afford to have black folks feel good about who we are. Folks feeling good about who they are, it's going to be a problem. I got to get this real quick. Hold on a second. I got to answer this real quick.
okay, this is the wisdom table coming to you from Grand Houses in Harlem, USA. Our guest online is Brother Abiodun of the Last Poets. We invite you to go to your YouTube and put in the Last Poets, and you'll find a variety of presentations by them and they're classic. They are absolutely a classic.
Hello, I'm back.
Yes, sir. So we're
Yeah,
back.
yeah, we're getting ready
The,
to do a recording tomorrow. With you heard of T.S. Monk?
I'm sorry, say that. T.S. Monk. Yeah,
Yeah. I'm doing. Me and Umar are doing a recording with T.S. Monk tomorrow.
that's beautiful.
Yeah. That's.
That's beautiful.
And I was telling him stories about when I first met his father, the loneliest monk. I was in high school, and it was a wonderful moment in time. I mean, Thelonious lived around. He lived in Amsterdam Projects on Amsterdam Avenue, around 63rd Street, something like that.
Behind Lincoln Center.
Yeah, right there where Lincoln Center has been constructed. Right, well in the area. And and I went to Harrod High School, which is now John Jay College, because that used to be my high school, and that's on 59th Street and 10th Avenue. And it was diagonally across the street from Powell Memorial, which is a school that Kareem Abdul-Jabbar went to.
Yeah.
He was, yeah, he was a little older, but I would see him. I spoke to him a couple of times, but he didn't talk. He was not a conversationalist at all.
Right.
But we know he's a baller. But anyway, I was telling Monk about how when I met his dad, how excited I was because I was into jazz. I was a 15-year-old kid into jazz, trying to be grown before I was 18. I wanted to be a man, and jazz was the music. And I even had I used to, wear my quarter bands, and I tried to dress slick and just look like I was trying to be a sharp young man. And one of my boys saw this guy down at the corner. And he said, "That looks like Monk." And I had I guess it's about 12 of us or something. And we said, "What?" So we all took his word for it. We started running down to this corner where this guy was standing, and he had a silk sharkskin suit on and a stingy brim hat. And I don't know if I'd have stood there watching 12 young brothers coming after me. I mean, I think I would have gotten a little nervous. But he never flinched. He never moved. He stood right there. And when my boy said, "Oh, you Mr. Monk? You Mr. Monk, aren't you?" And he said, and we said, "Oh, man." I mean, it was the most beautiful thing I ever heard in my life. And I
Hmm.
cannot tell you what he said, but
Wow.
he spoke bebop. I mean,
Wow.
that's all I can say. He just gave us a lyric. He just said something, and the sound of his voice, oh, it just stayed with me forever because it was the loneliest monk speaking to us, and he wasn't afraid. He was like just sharing whatever it was he shared, but it was all positive. It
Yeah.
was all positive.
And where did your appreciation, your introduction, your love of jazz originate?
I was in a boarding school, and for about 4 years in the Bronx, and all the cats I used to look up to, they were deep into jazz. So I would hang out with some of the older guys, and they would be listening to Miles Davis and John Coltrane. I had never even heard these names. It was the only music I had been privy to was, of course, rock and roll, some R&B. I know watched American Bandstand on Saturday, and that was the white show, which of course Don Cornelius made into a black thing when he did Soul Train. But yeah, I got introduced to jazz when I was in boarding school, and the music just kind of it kind of said something. It made me appreciate music in a sense because it was music I could actually feel it. I could feel it. I think the first piece, the very first piece that I really fell in love with was a piece by Ahmad Jamal called um God, it was Ahmad Jamal. Um,
This is
Hold on.
classic. That's the classic one that you would always hear.
Yes.
Da, da,
Ba dee da da. Ba ba da
yeah,
ba da. Ba ba da ba da da. Yeah. Dun, 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 dun. I
that's
can't
right.
think of
That's
the
right.
name of it right now to save my life. but it's a, but and then of course my favorite things by John Coltrane. Oh my God. The, that that is those are some pieces that really stick in my head. And I fell in love with Nancy Wilson when I first heard her when I was a kid, and she sang jazz. And of course, Nina Simone is somebody that I will always worship because she had that fire. You know, she was the priestess, the high priestess of soul, and it's those are people who, and I would listen to my, even before I went to boarding school. I was already in love with Nancy Wilson because she was just so sassy and glamorous, and she had a beautiful voice. I didn't realize that she had taken her style from a brother named Little Jimmy Scott,
Mm,
and every single praise that you hear of Nancy Wilson is a
mm,
copy of what Little Jimmy Scott would have done.
mm.
I mean, and nobody even know, and a lot of people, very few people even know about Little Jimmy Scott. But if you got one of those gadgets where you can pull up old music, you just pull up Day by Day by Little Jimmy Scott, and you'll hear exactly what I'm saying. I mean, he was a monster. His voice, I mean, and if you hear him, you first might think it's a woman singing, but it's not. It's a
Right,
man.
exactly.
He was outrageous. Oh my God, Little Jimmy Scott. And that was the pattern that Nancy used. She admits it. She never denied it. She says, "Oh yes." When I first heard him singing, I said, "That's what I want to do," and exactly like him too. And
Mm,
she used. And you don't hear too many women copying a man to get their style.
mm,
You know.
mm, mm. Now, what have you learned in your journeys around the world, your observation of our own community? What have you learned about what I call communal dancing, dancing where you dance with a partner and you hold their hand at some point, or many.
Yeah, that dancing seems to be almost ancient nowadays, right? No, it
Right.
still happens. People still do that at certain places. I mean, the two step is still a very interesting dance. I'm not really a big time dancer. I do like to dance, but and I love dancing because dancing is poetry in motion. So I love to watch dancing and I love to dance a bit myself. But I'm not like my partner Umar. He's a dancer. He likes to dance, and he really. I used to have Phyllis Stickney over to the house a lot, and she'd love to dance, and they dance all over the house. But I love to watch dancing, and I appreciate because, like as I say, dancing is poetry in motion. That's exactly what it is. So and we can turn. It's amazing how we can just turn anything into a dance. I have even been accused. We did a video with Common. It was a Grammy Award winning. It was called The Corner, and in the video, in the video, of course, and we did it in Chicago. It was in the middle of winter. It gets awfully cold, so we had this big round can with some fire uh, in it, and I was keeping my hands warm, but I was in the video, and I could hear the music. So I remember I was in a high, I was doing a workshop in this high school in Brooklyn, and I walked by a classroom, and I heard the girl say he had that same ring on in the video. I mean, because the
Oh,
kids
wow.
watch all these videos, and so I turned around, and I went back into the classroom, and it wasn't a class I had been assigned to. I said, so, "Who's talking about my ring?" So this girl says, "I saw that same ring. You had that ring on in the video you did with Common." And I said, "Oh, you watched that video?" She says, "Yep." I said, "What was I doing in the video, honey? You were dancing." I said, "I was dancing." I said, "What kind of dance was I doing?" And she started acting like I was standing over the fire, holding my hands, dancing, moving my hands over the fire in rhythm to the music. And so she turned my moving my hands over the fire into a dance. I said, "Now we are too funny." I said, "If my daughter heard you say that, she would just have a heart attack dying because she knows Daddy don't dance." But I enjoyed her giving me some dance points.
In terms of what you just commented on dancing, that there are places where the two step is done. There's a brother in Harlem who dedicates himself to doing that. His name is Brother Luther Gale, and
Uh-huh.
he's like us from back in the day.
Okay.
Um, talk talk about uh, those poets who have preceded. They may not have been what we would call on this side of the interview conscious poets, but my mind goes back to a brother by the name of Babs Gonzalez. Did you ever study
Yeah.
him?
Yeah, I'm familiar with Babs Gonzalez. I'm not too familiar with much of his work, but I do know of him. Yes, and
Right.
and there are a number of great poets who they. I mean, I think Victor Hernandez Cruz. He did a book called Snaps, but all these poets had something to say. You know, you can't. It's almost impossible to be a real poet and not be conscious of what's going on. I don't think
Mm.
I don't think that's possible for you to write poetry in just without any references to reality is almost impossible. So
Okay.
all the poets that I know have definitely touched on what's happening. Nobody is writing. There's this discussion about art for art's sake, which is, I guess it makes for a nice conversation, but we don't have time for art's sake. Not especially when you have as many issues going on like we have right now. I mean, this is a very pivotal moment in time for not only America but for every individual in America, because a change is definitely coming. I mean, but the change isn't just because of the orange clown in the White House. That he's just a part of it. He doesn't even know that he's a pawn in this. He's not.
Mm.
He's not really in charge. It's just that he had to be in that position for us to see clearly what America's made of, because America still has
Grant Houses Community Radio, the soul of the Upper West Side.
Uh,
yeah. So
the
so yeah. So he
okay.
doesn't even know that he's a part of the equation. But this is a rebirth of sorts, and you know the labor pains are the worst, and that's what we're going through right now. Some major labor pains, and unfortunately, there'll be some casualties, as we know. Everybody's not going to come through, but the truth is that if we recognize our Africanness, we'll realize that none of us die. We just move on to different dimensions. And if you knew somebody that was here who is departed, if you need their assistance, they can help you even more, because now they're just spirit, and the spirit is much stronger than the flesh. But a lot of times we discount the spirit. We don't think about it because we're so used to dealing with things we can see, touch, taste, smell, and feel right in our hands. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's that which you cannot see, which can help you much more than what you do see. And so we need to recognize the spiritual aspects of our existence. And we need to recognize that, there is a God in each of us that we need to activate. And we need to
Right.
work with that energy and make that and have that God make it clear that, we're and the devil has never defeated God on any level. So if there are devilish things happening here, if the devil is on the prowl, let him be on the prowl, because we have a shield, and that shield is God, and we understand. And I don't have a particular name for him: Yahweh, Jehovah, Buddha, Allah. It doesn't matter. I don't care who you worship. Just have somebody that some spiritual entity that you go to for salvation for your own soul. And it all comes from within anyway. It's the faith that you have in whatever it is you believe that's going to make it work. It's not going to be something from outside. It's going to be something that you got from within. So it's time for us to call on that. It's time for us to help each other out in every possible way we can. Offer good advice, do a good deed. All these things are important, because things are definitely changing. There's going to be some major changes, and some of us will be comfortable with them, and many of us will not be. But this is a very, very important period in time, and I'm looking at those folks who have not been able to be still, who have gone through anxiety attacks, and they can't seem to get it together, and that's unfortunate, because you really have to learn how to be calm within yourself. You cannot afford to allow yourself to go to pieces because things aren't like what they used to be.
Brother Abiodun, we only have a couple more, three more questions for you, but I need you to go back over a subject matter that folks don't get into that tough today, and that is the God within. Build on that.
We always say that God created us, and I agree. That's a wonderful line. All I know is that if I create a painting, I create a poem, I create a dish for you to eat, some of me is going to be in that dish. Some of me is going to be in that painting. Some of me is going to be in that poem. You'll be able to identify me in some form or another by what I've created. And there's no difference in God. If there's a God, there's an energy, there's a force of nature that put us here. Then that force of nature that created us gave of himself or herself to the creation. So we have that in us because we were created with that kind of energy. And and it's a beautiful thing. And once you recognize that you don't have to go to church to worship him. The church is wherever you are. You could sit next to a tree and make it your church. You know, it blows my mind is how many we have these Christians fighting over different ideas, Methodists, Episcopalian, so forth, so on. They got these different divisions, and then they got these churches, and they have the crosses, and Jesus Christ saves. And as all of my readings, I never read one place where Jesus endorsed a church in his name. He did. Matter of fact, he was totally against all that stuff. Or as I recall, and I read pretty well, Jesus just wanted everybody that he came in contact with, he wanted to show himself as an example of what you can be.
Right.
You can be me. You can be Jesus.
Right.
You too can walk on water. We have to understand what that means. It's like doing the impossible. Yes, you have the ability. Miracles live inside of us, but we've got to find that center. We have to learn how to meditate within ourselves, and we have learned. And like I said before, the biggest part of everything is having faith. And having faith, it doesn't mean that you're just throwing all caution to the wind and whatever comes, you just have faith that it's going to be okay. No. Having faith without work is dead. You work. You make sure that all of your ends are covered. You do everything conceivingly possible. Everything that you can imagine that's going to help you be victorious or be a winner or be successful in whatever the venture is. You do what you can do. And once you have truly put in your best, then that's when faith kicks in. Faith kicks in because you've done the work. And you know that this is work that I feel proud of. And I know it's going to fly. And so you develop faith. Our faith has been weak. We have done work and we don't believe that it's going to get recognized. It doesn't have to be recognized right now, but it will be recognized if you've done honest work. There's the God in us is dying of hunger and thirst because we keep looking outside for him. We are looking for a Messiah to come into our lives. We are the Messiah within ourselves, and we're supposed to connect. One of the things you mentioned, travel. I've traveled, and I must say, I thank the last Poets for it because since I've been back in the group for these last 30-some years now, we've been traveling around the world. Listen, every place I've gone, I've met angels, people who are willing to go out of their way to make my stay as comfortable as possible. I've never had a bad moment where I went to a place and I said, I never go back to that place. Every single place I've ever been has been a joy. It's almost like the world is truly my playground. I'm not supposed to be afraid. And I run into people, I don't care what language, whether I'm in Morocco or South Africa or England or Bath or Spa, or it doesn't matter wherever I'm at on the planet. I'm always running into other human beings who recognizes their humanity. To be perfectly honest, there is only one race on the planet, and it's the human race. But we've gotten everything by, we want to cut things up and so forth. Listen, I love my people. I love black folks. I think we're special. I think we're magnificent, and I'm so happy that I'm a part of this crew. But I do not love my folks in spite of all the other people. I mean, the Asians and so some white folks and other folks who are cool, and they're all right. I have no problem with them. I prefer to be with my sisters. I prefer to be hanging out with my brothers. That's my preference. But if there's somebody else in the room and they want to party, they want to learn how to do the electric slide, I'll show them. Ain't no problem. Because we are all here together, and we should share that humanity with each other. And this is one of traveling. I have this. I think that for the most part, people really have some good in them that they would like to share. I don't feel like people are basically evil inside. And we've had some social scientists who said man is born inherently evil. I think that's a little crazy because we can see that evil manifests itself in a lot of different ways, but I don't believe that's the bulk of mankind. I think that that's a few people who become a loud, nasty minority for a lot of us to have to pay attention to. But that's not the human race. That's not the people that I've met and known. And I do know that there is a battle right now between heaven and hell, and we all know that those are not locations; they are conditions.
Mm. And we talked about dance. You talked about rhythm, and look at the game of basketball. What do you see in the game of basketball?
Well, as I said earlier, it's an African dance. I mean, and then the fact that you're playing with this globe, this sphere, this round circle, it's like you got the whole world in your hand. You're able to do tricks with it and make it go through a hoop, and it's at 360 degrees. I mean, it's a constant revolution. I mean, it's really a very intriguing game. And then you look at the whole concept of dribbling it. That's nothing. When you see cats like Chris Paul dribbling the ball, or even Harden when he's doing his thing, getting ready to shoot a three. I mean, there's a certain you could just replace each beat every time the ball hits the floor. Replace that with a drum beat, and you'll get a pattern that could probably make you want to dance because these brothers are so adept at moving the ball at their own will in a rhythmic pattern that allows them to get into a space and fool their opponent so that they get to the point where they can shoot the basketball without any problem. I mean, it's really just another one of the ingenious things because, see, we're the masters of music because we're masters of rhythm and time. And I should say, we're masters of time and space. We know how to actually work with time, and we know how to work with space. We don't. You could take a bunch of black folks and put us in a cramped space. Now, of course, that's not happening because of this virus. But you could take a bunch of black folks and put us all together. I used to give New Year's Eve parties here every year, and it was so crowded. But folks knew how to maneuver. I never had no fights. I didn't have nobody cutting nobody or hurting nobody or shooting nobody. And folks could hardly get by without rubbing shoulders. If you didn't want to rub shoulders, don't come here because you're going to be rubbing shoulders. It's going to get like that. But we know how to move in and out and not step on each other's feet and all that kind of stuff. And then we can dance at the same time. We have always been masters of time and space. And we can do magical things with that. And that's all we really need. And that's primarily because we're not trying to control time and space. We're just trying to work with them.
The last two questions. When we talk about basketball, you quite often hear the phrase, he's in a zone. Does
Right.
that exist in the world of music, in the world of poetry, being
Oh,
in a zone?
yes. Yes. Being in a zone means that you have found a theme. You have jumped on a particular theme, an idea that is just, a real writer, whether it's a writer of music or poetry or even a painter, long before you actually go through the process of producing what it is that's in your mind, you produce it. You produce the entire thing in your head already. You get a picture. You have almost like a. It's the same thing with a basketball player. It's like before they take a shot. A lot of times they take a snapshot of the shot before they take a shot. Like, I'm going to go to the spot. Larry Bird would announce it because he was arrogant. I'm going to go to the spot. I'm going to shoot a jump shot right there at that spot, right there. And then he would do it. And it would just piss you off because he just told you he was going to do it and you couldn't stop him. And the thing about it is that a poet, usually when you're writing a poem, it's not something that's just going to fall out of your pen. No, you have something in your mind and that says, this is what I want to say. And then the process itself starts to unravel and shows you other ways you could say what you want to say even better than what you thought maybe, so you might come up with the classic. Sometimes you may even fall short. But the idea of whatever it is you want to do happens long before you start the process. And which means that before you sit down to create something, you've got to think about it. You see, something that many of these gadgets have stopped us from doing. Many people have put thinking in the back seat. Thinking should never be in the back seat of anything. Thinking is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do. I mean, that's the original computer. And the fact that you got a brain that can figure stuff out. Oh my God. I mean, I wouldn't, I want to always have use of my limbs, but Lord knows, please always let me have use of my brain. I enjoy the and thinking allows me to have an imagination. It allows me to figure stuff out without having to go read about it, to be able to put things together in my head and see the patterns and follow accordingly. I mean, thinking is a beautiful gift. And I don't know why anybody would want to give up the idea of thinking, because nothing tops it. When you can think, you can do so very, very much. There was a book. I don't know if you read the book. It's called Siddhartha. Are you familiar with Siddhartha?
No, I'm not.
Siddhartha is by a guy named Herman Hesse. I'm sure he's probably a white guy from sound like a German name, but the book is bona fide. So it's about 160 pages, maybe not, maybe even less. But it's a short book, and it's about this Brahmin who was raised upper middle class family, and he had everything in the world that he would want in order to live and survive and live prosperously, but he was very unhappy because he wanted to find his own inner happiness, what could make him happy, because he had everything given to him, but he wanted to find himself. He wanted to search the world to see who he was. He didn't just want to be a part of this family that looked like everything was laid out. So he goes off into search for himself, and in doing that, he goes through a bunch of different experiences. He becomes a merchant, and he makes a lot of money. He's a very good merchant, and he became rich, but that didn't satisfy him. He had everything he did. He was good at it, but it did not bring him happiness. It didn't bring him that the insight as to who he really was and what his real worth was. He always felt like there was something missing, so he kept changing. And then he heard about this countess who was just beautiful, and men would come from miles around to see this beautiful woman. Oh man, they would write stories about her. She was just so special. So men would come from all over, and they'd bring her gifts, and they would wait in her courtyard every Thursday with gifts to the countess, and to see if maybe one of them would have a gift to give her that would excite her enough to get a call back, and maybe you could become her lover or something. So he goes. Siddhartha goes to the place, to the palace, and he's in line with the other suitors, but he doesn't have a gift. He's just there. He wants to see her. He wants to meet her. He's got this desire to see her. Maybe she'll bring him into happiness somehow. And she comes out there with her maidens, and they inspect all the guys and take the gifts into the palace, and she smiles, and they all hope that maybe my gift will maybe have her get in touch with me, and I'll be in the palace one day. And then she gets to Siddhartha, and she looks at him, and she says, "And what do you have for me?" And he looks at her and says, "I can wait, I can fast, and I can think." And she says, "Oh boy." And that's not a gift as far as she's concerned. I mean, but then she looks at him and says, "Okay." And she just walks on by. After she's taken all the gifts and all the suitors are gone, she looks into the courtyard, and there's Siddhartha. He's still standing there. She doesn't know why he's standing there, but she passes him by. She goes into the palace with her maidens, and then she looks out the window, and Siddhartha's still standing there. Then it starts to rain. The rain is just coming down in buckets, and he's getting soaking wet, but he has not budged. He's standing right there in the same spot, getting soaking wet. She starts to worry about him. She tells the maiden, bring him inside, give him some clothes to dry himself off. Oh my God, he's got to be hungry. He's been standing there for hours. What's wrong with this guy? And he comes in, they give him a bath, give him dry clothes, feed him, and after at the table, he's talking to her, telling jokes, and they're laughing and having a conversation. The conversation leads to a friendship. Friendship leads to some loving. They're in the bed. He's making love to her, and she says, "How did you ever get here? How did you ever get here?" He says, "I can wait, I can fast, and I can think." I said, wow. I said, what a hell of a story. I mean, that was his gift. If you've got those three things down, there isn't very much that you will not accomplish. But waiting is being patient. Doesn't mean you're sitting doing nothing. fasting means that you're doing without that which you love. Maybe you're taking a break from video games or from eating sweets or from smoking weed or whatever it is you like to do. But you learn how to control it. You learn how to fast. You learn how to just sacrifice it for a moment for something else. And thinking, oh my God, what a joy to be able to have a brain that can work, that can figure stuff out. So he had the gift. He had the real gift. And of course, they even had a child. But it brought him in peace for some time, but then he had to go. What finally brought him into happiness was, and it was so funny, I thought it was so very poetic. He became a ferry boat driver. He
Mm.
would take it from one side of the river to the other. And all the people that he knew in life who had passed on, he could see their faces in the water. And he would communicate with them by when he would take people from one side of the river to the other. And it was such a peaceful life and a wonderful life. He wanted his son to have that experience. And his son, he had his son with him for a short while, but that was not the life for his son. So his son left. But then, like sometimes we have children that we want them to be what we want them to be, but they have their own road. And we've definitely got to let them go their own road. We can't make anybody be what we want them to be. But, it's just but the idea of any writer or any musician, any artist, any creative artist, before you create your piece, whatever it is you're creating, you've got to think about it.
Beautiful. And these are the last two. Share with us the knowledge and the experience of human gifts, of humanness that you learned from Brother Zach Husser.
Well, I learned from him that when you're really say you're somebody's brother and you really, it's like a lot of times we use the word love just too easily. I mean, I love you. I love you. Uh, these, as far as I'm concerned, love is an action verb. I mean, it's some people will say love is a noun. No, love is an action verb. Show me you love me. Show me how much. Don't tell me. Zach was the kind of brother that didn't just, he wouldn't call you up and say, I just called you because I was thinking about you and I love you, brother. No. He would always have a plan. He'd always have something that he was about, that he wanted to connect you to. He was a resourceful brother. Matter of fact, I would say Zach was a real human resource because if he knew of something that could help inspire or motivate somebody else to do something that they needed, he would connect you directly to them. He didn't talk. He actually walked the walk. And he did it in a way that made you feel pride. And it was the same way he played basketball. I mean, he was a no-nonsense brother on the court, and he was the same way off the court. He didn't have no time to play games. He was always trying to accomplish something, to make something work, and to get and of course his love, the love that we had was for our people, and to the point where he would go out of his way to do something that was going to brighten our day, make us feel better, and to find a way to make us feel the need to come together to accomplish some things. He always wanted to see the unity. He always wanted to show us. He would always be a part of that gathering of us where we were showing each other love, where we were sharing good things with one another. Zach was like the master of that. He was the maestro of a good feeling ball. He just wanted you to be able to appreciate who you were and not drag yourself through the mire, because we have so many people who live in a world of depression. Zach was he was an antidepressant. He was truly someone who you couldn't live in a world of depression around Zach. He's gonna lift you up. He's gonna make you feel much better than you did before you saw him. These are people that you don't find a whole lot of people like Zach. Zach, I'm sure that many of us know someone maybe close to that, but when you meet someone as thorough as he was, with the resources that he had and the intelligence that he had, that's a super gift. And it does. And unfortunately, he's not gonna get the write up that say John Lewis would get, because he wasn't in Congress, he wasn't in the tabloids and all that stuff like that. But those of us who know, we know he was just as valuable. It's the Zachs of the world that make things happen, Those folks that do things out of from their heart and from their soul without any recognition, but they're doing it because they have the ability to do it, and they're doing it because they have the desire. And he had the desire. His desires to see us shine were beyond anybody's understanding, and I truly applauded him and appreciated his presence and our friendship and our brotherhood. And he's also another witness to the fact that I know he's not dead. He's just moved into another dimension, because even now, if I'm in a situation where I need his spirit to accompany me or to help me in getting something done, I'll call on Zach, and I know he hears me. And I treat him like an ancestor, because that's what he is.
Beautiful. And we're ending the way we began. The way we began was with the last poets for the millions. And how did that piece come about, brother?
When it was said to me that they were gonna have this Million Man March, and then one of the artists here, he's a visual artist, name is Ademola, and he's done a few murals that are up here in Harlem. He's over at the Dower Art Cultural Center. He's one of the people who actually runs that. Anyway, he told me, says, "Man, I would love for you to write a piece for this March, June, because we could print it up and so forth." So when he asked me to do that, I just thought that was special, because I knew that the occasion was going to be special. So I put my special cap on, and I brought my special pen, and it was, again, the process was thinking about it, knowing what the subject was, and how would I address it. And I said, this is a Million Man March. Oh, it's just going to be for the millions. So in that case, the title of the piece came from the occasion. It wasn't anything super creative. It was just simply trying to address the occasion that we were all looking forward to. Because you had many women who were telling their brothers and their husbands and their boyfriends, you better go to that march, you better go to that march. So we had a lot of support from a lot of sisters, and I would hear this a lot as well. And so when I wrote the piece, I wanted to really just give a kind of a whole, tell the story of what we've been through. And when I say we, the millions of us, not just a few of us, but what the millions of us who've come here have gone through. And so I had to go back, of course, to the beginning, to the slave ships, and bring it up to date. And it was such a journey, but a joy for me to go through that, because I recall when I first got into the Last Poets, I felt so inadequate, because I didn't have much knowledge about our history. At that, I was like 18 years old, and I wanted to be. I wanted to be able
to GHCR, Grant Houses Community Radio, home of the Community News Service.
Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so, and I wanted to have conversations. I would be in a circle with some guys that were always older than me, but they were having conversations, and then they would break into something like, "Man, well, you know what Frantz Fanon said in Wretched of the Earth on page 236? I'm saying,
Right.
Holy cow. Oh, you know what Chancellor Williams said in Destruction of Black Civilization on page 305? I'm saying, oh, my God. I never heard of these books. And these guys are quoting pages. I felt so dumb. I mean, I another word I could use. I could not have a conversation. I was unaware of the books. I hadn't heard of no Wretched of the Earth. I had never heard of no Destruction of Black Civilization, Christ of the Negro Intellectual, or Moon 2, these books were not in my library. I didn't know these books. I read more books in 2 months or 1 month to be a revolutionary poet than I did to ever be a student in any school I've ever been in. I was reading my butt off because I wanted to be able to have a conversation with brothers. So I gained a great deal of knowledge real fast because I wanted to be a part of the mix. I did not want to be a fly on the wall. I didn't want to be left out. I wanted my voice to be heard. But in order for your voice to be heard, you got to say something. If you don't know nothing, you can't say something. So I started studying, and I educated myself, and so knowing our history and being intimately involved with it because of my own personal desires to just wanted to be accepted. it gave me information enough for me to write for the millions. I know for a fact, I could have never written for the millions in the first few months that I was the last poet because I didn't know enough.
Mm. Thank you, my brother. Brother Abiodun of the Last Poets in Harlem, USA, ladies and gentlemen, here with us on the Grand Houses Community Radio. Want to thank you very much for your time today and definitely for your work and the work of the other brothers in the Last Poets. The music, the presentations are classic, and we thank you and may God continue to bless you and your family and bless the other brothers of the Last Poets. Thank you for being on the Wisdom Table.
Well, thank you for having me, brother, and I appreciate what you're doing. And I'm right up the block from you, Morningside Drive. So hopefully I will get over to your studio at one point. I always go to the store right across the street to the supermarket to buy my groceries. So I'm right there in the neighborhood all the time. So hopefully we'll be able to get together. Thank you so much, brother.
Peace, my
okay,
brother.
Now. Peace.
For the millions, for you, Africans, for you, chains of the slave ships, for the millions of scars and you on the backs and faces by the bullwhip, and you, for the millions who jumped overboard, for the blood that poured on the shores of North America, South America, Central America, and Europe. For you. And each ripple in the ocean is a grave for an African who refused to be a slave. For you. For the millions. For the millions. For you. For the millions. For the millions. For the millions. Who cut the cane, picked the cotton, whose names have been forgotten. And you, whose flesh has rotten with the trees they hung us from. And cut off our hands, and cut out our tongues if we play the drum. For you. For the millions who were shot, hung, beat to death, tarred and feathered, boiled in oil, whiplash, backlash, crocus sacked and thrown in the river. For the millions who were castrated, miseducated, and segregated, and integrated, and legislated by the constipated. For the millions who were lied to, denied to, and misguided to, and vampire to, not abided to. So we decided to, 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 we decided to get ourselves together and change the weather, not just for now, for you, but forever. For you. For you. We decided to take a look at the beauty of ourselves, at this color skin, at this coarse hair, at these full lips, at this Africa, all inside our souls, still breathing the breath of God's in our lungs. Greatness is where we're coming from. For the millions, for the millions, for the millions who laid in, lived in, jailed in, boycotted it, picketed, cursed at, spit at, yelled at like blacks not where it's at, and we should be satisfied to ride in the back. For Fannie Lou Hamer, Rosa Parks, Ella Baker, Silas Good, William Brooks, for Harriet Sojourner, for the Malcolm and Martin, Deacons and Panthers and James Shea, and Kunta Kinte too. For the men who knew, and for those who always known, no matter what, truth crushed to the earth shall rise again. No matter how many bullets, prisons, diseases, and death, no one can take our breath away. We are here to stay. No matter how much liquor and crack, nothing can kill the fact that we are a divine creation. Started civilization, built the pyramids and the Sphinx, taught the world how to pray and think, not to mention inventions we never got credit for. And all the babies we raised, even when our own were ignored. For the millions.
And you.
For the
And
millions.
you.
For the millions.
For the millions.
With fire in their soul.
For millions.
That burns so bright.
For the
And
millions.
the strength of our will as dark as the night. And the rhythm when we walk. And the rhythm when we talk.
For you.
And the rhythm when we walk.
For you.
And the rhythm when we talk.
For you.
Rhythm when we walk.
For you.
And the rhythm when we talk.
For you.
Rhythm when we walk.
For you.
Rhythm when we talk.
For you.
Rhythm when we walk.
For you.
Rhythm even when we have nothing to say. We are the sounds that put color and spice in the day. For the millions who are ready,
For you.
turn this thing around, tired of being tired and crawling on the ground. Millions who are ready, turn this thing around, tired of being tired and crawling on the ground. Millions who are ready to turn this thing around, tired of being tired and crawling. It's time to return to our spiritual home. Reclaim our throne and leave that American nightmare alone. For the millions, for the millions. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, Abiodun Oyewole.
Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.